So the law enforcement, when somebody goes missing, they will always look at the partner first. That would be whether there's any problems in the relationship or not. That's the first thing they'll look at. Are there any problems in the relationship? If the person hasn't got a partner, then they'll look at the rest of the family. What motive might anyone have? Is there money? Is there, that good old insurance policy? That's something that's common reason that people kill their loved ones, isn't it? For the insurance, money makes the world go round. So this story that I'm going to tell you about, it's very interesting because, that is what happened in this case. So the person that went missing in this case was this woman, Tanya. Tanya Ryder, just one day didn't come home from work. Now Tanya and this is what in cases where people go missing and the husband or the wife is asked, what happened to them? They quite often will say, oh yeah, they were fine this morning when I went out to work. I left them in bed asleep. They were fine, and they said they left to go to work and then they just never came back. There's quite often, isn't there? This is what we'll hear from the partner. Look at Chris Watts. That story, not story, but that case. It's on September the 19th, 2007. And she never arrived at work. She never, there wasn't, that was it. She was disappeared. Now, the thing is, her husband, he didn't realise, thing is, they were a couple, they had no children, and they were saving up money. And so they were working like opposite hours, if you see what I'm saying. So she'd gone to work, she went to work, she left work, but she never arrived home. That's what happened to her. They were saving up money to build a home. They wanted to build their own home. She was 33 years old and she was living near Seattle, in Greater Seattle in America. Her husband, 39 years old. Anyway, so she never arrived home, but it took him a little while to notice because they would work opposite shifts. They were working like mad, trying to, save up the money to buy, to build a home, and working opposite hours, opposite shifts. So they were like ships that passed in the night, basically. So she set off from work, finished her night shift at a grocery store, and she wanted to go home to rest before her second shift at a clothing store. So she was working 2 jobs, but she just didn't ever go home. And because of their busy work schedules, her husband didn't realise she was missing until September the 22nd. So she'd gone missing actually on September the 20th, but her husband said he didn't realise she was missing until September the 22nd, as one of her co-workers rang and said, why hasn't she come into work? Now, when he called the police, so it sort of went for this story is really ironic because actually, instead of the police suspecting the husband from the beginning, they didn't, because when he first did phone the police and reported her missing, because they had no children, I suppose, and they just said, oh, well, she's an adult, she's a grown woman, she's got every right to go missing if she wants to go missing. This is what this poor guy was told in the beginning. Or is he a poor guy? So don't forget, it's normally the husband when someone disappears. And also, normally, if somebody's not been found within the first 24 hours, every time after, minute after that, really, it becomes less likely that they will be found. So anyway, that's what he was told. That's what Tanya's husband was told. They said she's an adult. She can go if she wants to. If she wants to go off on her own and not tell you where she's going, she can do that. So he asked them to trace her cell phone, but they wouldn't. And he says her husband said that he begged them to help, and they wouldn't. The police weren't interested, and they literally said she's an adult, she can go where she wants, and she doesn't have to tell you anything. Now, the police say that they didn't investigate the case from the beginning because when they looked at her bank account, they saw activity. But it was a joint account, so he was using the bank account as normal, for his daily needs. And so, yeah, there was activity on the bank account, but he had access to it. Anyway, so that was a mistake that was made by the police from the beginning because they saw a bank account was being used. They just presumed she was okay. Anyway, it was so her husband finally he had to keep bugging the police. The week passed and he volunteered to take a polygraph test. He said, "Look, give me a polygraph test. Let's get this out of the way, and then you can find my wife and come and search my house. Come in and search the house." But of course, bearing in mind a week's gone past by now, so he's had a week. If he's responsible for Tanya's disappearance, he's had a week to clear it all up because the police weren't interested. He didn't report her missing until 2 days after she disappeared. So, finally, the police started to take him seriously. But you know what happened then? So they went from not being interested in his wife being missing, and saying, "Oh, she can go off, she can do whatever she wants, she's a grown adult," etc. As I say, they had no children, so I suppose they were thinking, well, there's no children involved. And then they'd seen this activity on a bank account. Well, in fact, it was his activity on the bank account. So finally, after he had to go and beg for a polygraph and beg for them to come and search his house, they did, and they changed from not being interested in the fact that this woman had disappeared to accusing him, because he is the husband, and the husband is normally the person who's responsible when their wife disappears. I'd say it's 9 times out of 10, maybe even a higher percentage than that. If a spouse goes missing, and not only a man but a woman as well, either way, it is probably 99% likely that the spouse has done something to them. We could think of a million cases probably where that's happened. Hi, Lily Paulie. Hi, David. There's Chris Watts, there's Lacey Patterson, and, how many cases do we know of that the wife or husband goes missing and it turns out it's the spouse that's done it? So this guy, he's gone, he's reported his wife as missing 2 days after she's gone missing. Police aren't interested. They're saying, no, she's a grown woman, she can do what she wants, blah, de, blah, de, blah, de, blah. 8 days later, he's still begging them to track her cell phone or, help it. He's saying she wouldn't have disappeared like that. There's no reason, there's no problems in our marriage, not apart from, your normal sort of arguments that couples have. So, yeah, and then, so it went from them not being interested whatsoever to being really interested, but thinking he's done something to her and he's right under suspicion then. So it's sort of gone from the sublime to the ridiculous in a way. It's gone from them not being interested in what's happened to this woman to suddenly he must have done something, you know. So you know, it's it's just something that happens, isn't it? I mean, he's bound to come under attention, and he knew that. So it was him who said to them, "Search the house, give me a lie detector test. I haven't done anything, but my wife is missing." Yeah. Um. So it went on. I think it was 8 days. 8 days. Still no sign of this woman. And now he's having, a nightmare, because now everybody, not only the police that were suspecting him, but the friends and the family and everything, everyone was starting to look sideways at him. And so it was a terrible experience, really, if he was innocent, of course. Well, just goes to show that strange things do happen, because uh, 8 days after Tanya Ryder disappeared, she was found. And she was in her car. She was trapped upside down in her vehicle, 20 feet away from a busy road, but hidden in a bushy ravine. So she'd come off the road. She'd had a car accident. And this husband of hers, he had driven along that road so many times, because he retraced her journey from work. He knew her journey from work, so he'd gone up and down that road so many times, and he'd driven right past her. 8 days she was in that ravine, trapped upside down in her car. So, I mean, it's incredible, isn't it? And she had the most terrible injuries. How she survived is an absolute miracle. So, she had a dislocated shoulder, two broken bones, and she was so dehydrated that her kidneys were failing. One of her legs came within a whisker of needing to be amputated, but luckily, in the end, it didn't need to be amputated. Now, Tanya doesn't even remember the car accident, but she woke up. Imagine, oh my God, imagine. You 1 minute you're driving along the road, and the next minute you wake up and you're upside down in your car, and she couldn't reach her cell phone, because she was trapped. The cell phone was out of her reach, and she couldn't. She was trying to reach it, and she couldn't. She spent 8 days trying to reach it, to call for help, and praying that someone would find her. She could see the phone, but she could not reach it, and she kept seeing it light up, because people were ringing, sending messages, etc. Her husband, I expect, as well. Everybody trying to ring her, trying to find out what's happened to her. She was laying in the car, trapped, and all she could see was the phone lighting up, but she could not get to it to answer it. And she just had to pray. So what I was saying earlier about praying, I mean, what else could you do if you're in that situation? Can't move, just can't do anything. And when you say 8 days, that's 8 nights as well, isn't it? Hi, Heather. That's nights, the nights, isn't it? Imagine how terrified she must have been. Because even one day in that position would have been a nightmare, wouldn't it? But imagine 7 nights, or 8 days and probably 7 nights, upside down in a ravine, in a car, can't move, with those no water, no food. I mean, how was she going to the toilet? I mean, it just makes it's incredible. Anyway, she was found thanks to her husband's persistence. And you know what? When I mean, I just feel for him so much because I can't imagine how it would be. So he's had to spend sort of all those days sort of trying to convince them that she was missing and to do something about it. And when they finally said, "Oh, okay, we're going to do something about it," he was the prime suspect. He was the prime suspect because the police had said to him, she was an adult, they've got no children. If she wanted to go missing, she could. And he had to just keep insisting because she didn't meet the criteria, apparently, for a missing person. So, yeah, when the police finally reacted, so his name was Tom, the husband's called Tom. Uh, of course, they focused their attention on him. He said that they hadn't had an argument, but you know what? That's what they say, isn't it? That's probably what Chris Watts said, or Scott Peterson, Lacey Peterson's husband. You know, they say that, oh no, there's no problems in our marriage. We were just sat, just said goodbye, I love you. That's what they normally say, isn't it? Like the ones that have done something to their wives or husbands. So yeah, they just walked out the door and they said, or I left them and they were just in bed and they said, I said I love you or whatever. Anyway, the police wouldn't have it, so probably because of so once they actually took him seriously that she had gone missing straight away, then it was his fault, according to them. So, and as I say, not only the police were suspecting Tom, but the family, the boss, Tanya's boss, she phoned the police and said to them she thought it was Tom that had done something to her. So all eyes were turning to Tom. So he went from being a desperate husband ignored by the police to a desperate husband under scrutiny for the disappearance of his wife. So it's a cautionary tale, isn't it? Because you know what, there was another case not long ago as well, where another guy was hung, drawn, and quartered really on social media and mainstream media because he said his wife had just got up and said she was going for a walk or whatever. And anyway, it was found she was seen on CCTV. They did sadly recover her body, but she was seen walking out to wherever it was, to take herself away from this world, and she was alone. The husband wasn't there, but he came under a lot of scrutiny as well. So yeah, and it's funny because Tanya was found just as Tom was preparing for a polygraph. He was at the police station and they were getting him ready for the polygraph. They were explaining to him the procedure and how it works. And at that very moment, that's when somebody came in and said that Tanya had been found. And they found her through the phone. He'd been asking the police for ages, track her phone records. So she didn't need to be lying there for 8 days, because if they would have checked her phone data, they would have found her within as soon as they checked it. And as I say, Tom had driven past her many times. So apparently what saved her life was the airbag and the fact she was wearing a seatbelt. And yeah, they had to cut off the roof of her car to get her out of there. And so, yeah, she probably didn't have much longer, really. I mean, 8 days, she was lucky to survive 8 days with a broken collarbone, dislocated shoulder, pressure sores from the days of being held by the seatbelt upside down, and the leg injury where she nearly lost her leg. And apparently the doctor said she was probably alive because she was young and healthy, and was wearing a seatbelt. So it just shows you, doesn't it? It's not always what you think, you know. And I was thinking about this Nancy Guthrie case, and you know, you just don't